Welcome to the latest episode of The Men's Mysteries. I'm really excited because today I am bringing on Adam Jackson from Sacred Sons to be on the show. Normally, he interviews other people, so it's kind of fun. I get to turn the tables on him and interview him today. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and share, like, and comment. And if you're watching this on Substack, please restack it, heart it, comment on it. This is how we get to share this wisdom and knowledge with other people. And today we're going to be exploring the sacred medicine of men's work and how this medicine is healing the relationships we have within ourselves, but also with the people around us. So without further ado, I am happy to welcome Adam Jackson to. Welcome to the Men's Mysteries Podcast, Adam Jackson. Now, normally you're the one interviewing people on your show, but today the tables have turned, ha ha ha, and I'm going to interview you. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
I am here for it. Taylor, good to see you again, my brother. It was great to be in person with you back in San Diego at Prime Leadership. And to be really honest with you, I fancy myself to be a better interviewer than an interviewee. So, best of luck to you in getting some good answers out of me. My name is Adam Jackson. I'm a co-founder of a men's organization called Sacred Sons. And I'm a father, I'm a husband. I should have cleared my throat before I started talking. And I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm an uncle. I hold these titles, and I believe that these things are sacred and that the relationships that we have, both to self and others within our reality, within our lives, get to be stewarded and tended to, just as we tend to other things that may seem important to us. I believe that as humans, our relationships are the most sacred things that we have. And so I am a student of understanding how that plays out for me in my life.
Well, speaking of that, there's something that I want to get into with you because, some people will watch this interview and they'll be like, I think I know who Adam Jackson is because I've seen him on the Sacred Sons podcast or I've seen him at different events and things like that. But I think it's interesting to get into the aspects that people don't know about. So you're talking about education, and when I look in the background, I see a lot of stuff. So first of all, tell us a little bit about the room. Like what is going
Mhm.
on with your room? I could see like an altar, I could see some other things, but I want to hear in your words what's going on with this room and what this room represents to you.
Yes, great question. There is an altar over my left shoulder, and on this altar, I've got some crystals. I've got an ammonite. I've got an assortment of crystals. I've got um, some necklaces, some sacred items that I've collected along my travels and journey. This particular necklace right here was one that was gifted to me by a friend in Peru as we took a trip down there. But you know what's interesting is I'm looking in the background of my own office. You know why I have crystals? Because my mom, when I was a kid, used to take me to gem and mineral shows.
Hmm.
And she's a spiritual person, not she's not super woo-woo out there, but I remember being a kid and she would talk about her inner child. She would talk about the power, the healing power of crystals, like since I was a little kid. And so a lot of that really rubbed off on me. And so I have a fascination with collecting things and also with ceremony and with ritual. And it's a beautiful uh, ayahuasca art painting here above me. This one comes from Kauai, artist called Mary Posa. And yeah, I got that one on Kauai from her in my travels. It's really just like a collection of significant events and places and people and kind of like rocks and minerals that have been around much longer than I have, and that will continue to be around much after I'm gone. And I'm rubbing off on my son, specifically my son Holland, my 5 year old. He's fascinated with crystals. He likes to come into my office and like pick ones up, and then we just talk about them and what they are. And I would say out of all of them, my favorite crystal, my favorite um, piece, like piece to collect, are ammonites. Ammonites are typically 80 million, plus years old. It's one of the earliest kind of organisms, and these fossils are found all around the world. And to me, that golden ratio spiral, it represents like the cycles of life, the cycles of death and rebirth, and having them around it brings me kind of like a sense of connectedness to all of it.
I appreciate that. And it kind of taps into something, when we talk about Sacred Sons, of course, we have this idea of this organization, and you guys do amazing work. I've been to a few different events. I'm going to be at more. I'm going to be showing up at the Leadership Summit and the relational training, and of course, looking forward to seeing continuing my journey after that. But, one of the things that I think makes an experience like that so sacred is the person that we bring to it. So who is Adam Jackson, the man, the person? You mentioned being a father and a brother and an uncle and all that, but there's also other archetypes. So, some before this call briefly, you talked about kind of your Renaissance background. So tell us a little bit about that and how that contributes to the experiences and the work that you bring as a leader to Sacred Sons.
Yeah, thank you. I've been me forever, Taylor.
Well, that's good.
As long as I can remember. And, I do. I feel like I bring a well-rounded life's worth of experience to this thing, to this piece of embodiment, right? So as a kid, as well as going to gem and crystal shows with my mom, I also played a lot of sports. I have an older brother, Jesse, who we were always in competition. Him and I remember going to see the movie Karate Kid and coming home and like karate fighting in our front yard afterwards. Like I've always had this genuine collaboration and competition with my older brother. And that's a part that fueled me into sports. I literally play everything for people to get to actually know me. I'm extremely competitive, whether it's I play tennis, still to this day. Um, I skateboarded for a lot of my life, and I was on a football and rugby team through high school. So team sports were a big part of like that chapter. Um, that's probably a common thing with like American kids. We're kind of all raised with athletics and things. And man, I'm also an artist. My brother and I, like, we would sit and draw for hours and hours. And through that art, um, I found my passion in poetry. And that led me to, in my teenage years, starting my first band, which was called 12 Tribes. And, again, I can't emphasize the importance of having an older brother to like open the world to me, to show me things. So I'm really grateful to Jesse for so many of the things that he showed me. And one of the things he did, he took me to my first local hardcore shows. And I just remember there was like a little mosh pit happening. I was 13 years old, and most of these people are 18 and up at an 18 and up club. And I just saw uh, poetry in motion. I saw a guy screaming on stage and conducting a mosh pit. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be on stage. I want to headbang. I was listening to Nirvana. I was listening to Rage Against the Machine, Nine Inch Nails, things like that. And yeah, starting a band, performing, that was a big part of my evolution through my teenage angst and an expression of some of the things that come up for us as teenagers when we're going through our first heartbreak or when we're feeling the compression of a world that sometimes feels unfair. Like I felt like I was um, aware at an early age, kind of um, things that were happening in the world that felt unjust or that seemed in a way that could be handled better, I suppose. And so I wrote a lot of lyrics about it. I wrote a lot of poetry about it. I screamed and I headbanged until this band, 12 Tribes, eventually got signed. And it took me traveling around this country and a little bit around the world, traveling and touring in Europe. And I'm saying all this because as I'm as I'm growing as a human, like I feel it's important to try things, to be um, not necessarily like a jack of all trades, but to try things and find things that light up our souls. And it's kind of a lost art in the ways of being human to try things. I feel like what I see in maybe this current generation is a lot of screen addiction and video game and porn addiction. It's like there's so much more out in this world if we allow ourselves to try.
Right.
And yeah,
I hear
so
that. I
yeah,
was going to say that, like, I have a saying that I like to share with people, which is to challenge what you know by discovering what you can learn. And how do you do that? You have to put yourself out there, be willing to go out into the world, discover the things that you don't know, and you're going to have those experiences, and they could be a little painful, but they're also liberating, and you lean into that edge and you discover things. And one of the things I like that you commented on, which I think is really real, and it fits the saying, in Sacred Sons, that brotherhood is the medicine. Having that older brother there to share those experiences with, how drawing on his experience and knowledge, and maybe at some point being able to give some of that back to him as well. It goes both ways.
absolutely. And being able to take him on tour and take him to shows and things, um, where at the time, he had already started his family. And with all of that artistic expression, I was also doing graffiti and skateboarding and all these things. I started out going to college as an art student, as a fine art student. And in the first quarter, I kind of realized I didn't like the idea of someone telling me what to draw or photograph. And I went to my college counselor and I was just talking to him about this. It feels limiting. And he was like, "Well, what do you want?" And at the time I was like, "I want to make money." Like, and I didn't really see a path through fine art and making money. And I was like, "How could I make money?" He was like, "Engineering." And I'm like, "I'm terrible at math, but I'm going to challenge myself." And so, and my college advisor, he was an industrial engineer by trade. So he advised me to go into this industrial engineering path, eventually, which took me to mechanical engineering. So I got to apply all of this artistic drawing experience that I had into mechanical engineering. So 5.5 years later, because that's about how long it takes to get an engineering degree, I got it, and I started working as an engineer. And this was like another kind of awakening. You wouldn't really think about that being an awakening, but for me, science, mathematics, and specifically the trade that I worked in for 13 years of my life was in environmental water quality. So having like this scientific background and understanding how things work, understanding how to take um, something from a concept into a prototype, into a physical product, into mass production, into the world, into the hands of scientists and researchers to do. I was making scientific water quality measurement instrumentation, and seeing that whole process unfold was, like I'm saying, it was a bit of an awakening. Understanding how things work, I think, is really important too. And so,
I'm
yeah,
with you on that. I apply the same thing to everything that I do. I love to know how it works and how to put it together. My brother's actually an environmental engineer who does like water quality work and things like that for Gulfstream. So it kind of
cool.
is. So, I can kind of relate to a little bit of what you're sharing there. And I think it's true. Like, you kind of, we want to find a natural way forward in our lives. This is part of the masculine drive, but it's also part of that energy, like so often we think of archetypes, for example, in men's work as, king, warrior, lover, magician, but obviously there's a lot more than that. I actually have this masculine archetype deck I'll have to bring it with me to the leadership summit. We
Yeah.
can have some fun with it. But they have different they have different archetypes on there. They have creator, they've got scientists, they have other things, and I think that's really important that we recognize that there's so much more we bring to this work with our respective backgrounds. That it's not just, oh, here I am and I'm being challenged in one way or another. We could be challenged in many different ways. And obviously you've stepped up and addressed those challenges and look at what you've created as a result. But part of that is because of that background, I think. That's what I get from it. Like everything that you bring to this experience of Sacred Sons is in part informed by stuff that people might not even think of as like, oh wow, that would contribute. But clearly it does, and look at the result.
It does in big ways and in the really uh, small ways that you may not even think about. For example, the merchandise for Sacred Sons, the t-shirts, the way that we have branded Sacred Sons, that really comes from my experience in a band and selling merch on the road and printing the t-shirts. Like I have an affinity for that chapter and for the art of of merch. I think it's such a cool part. And I would argue that previous men's organizations or weekends didn't focus on merch. But when you look around Sacred Sons landscape, you'll see even things like the holsters, which are part of our culture. Uh, these things are meaningful to me because of my own personal history with holding those pieces. So, yes, I agree that there are more archetypes than just the four common ones that we acknowledge. And how else does it show up in Sacred Sons? Well, certainly like the ability for me to scream or to project my voice on weekends and sustain my voice on weekends, which men's weekends can have a lot of cathartic release, and even my willingness to go there. It comes from some of those deep places in my own experience and journey, and then even the subtleties and the poetry and like referring back to my own inner child in a way that's like, oh, I get to like really soften and play here and be competitive with the sports. Sacred Sons is also really known for bringing the physical and the relational work together in terms of men's work. This is not therapy. This work is physical, it's relational, and out of that, it is spiritual. Like the spiritual, ecstatic states that we experience, they come from the relational and physical work blended together. And so that's just it's a part of who I naturally am. And I would share just a quick story to say that my brother and I, we used to box like when we were kids, but in my 20s, we actually joined a boxing gym together. And so we trained at this boxing gym for a long time, and we were going to have a fight night. And so they matched everybody up by height and weight. And him and I are at that time we were about the same. So we actually fought. I actually had sacred combat with my blood brother, 20 something years ago, not knowing it would be applicable to this thing that is happening now in Sacred Sun. So I've had that real life embedded experience um, before I even knew what men's work was.
That's powerful. And I like it because I think it's like it speaks to the efficacy of that work. I mean, I've been getting I'm working on getting my blue belt right now for Kung Fu. So I do some
Mm.
sparring as well. And I think that there is like just something really sacred about like what you bring into the circle. In fact, it was one of the things that got me super excited last year when I joined my first Sacred Sons event. I'm like, I went to Convergence 9, which AKA Remembrance, and I was like, all right, I hope we're gonna actually get to do Sacred Combat because that's what I'm here for. And we did, and I was super thrilled. I was the first one who stepped into the ring in my particular pod because I was like, I want to do this, and so I was so
Yes.
excited about it. And I've done other shades of men's work, and they all have their own value. Like I'm not knocking any one organization or anything like that, but I think there's something very raw and visceral and somatic about being able to connect with men physically. And I'm not even just talking about taking a punch in the face or punching someone in the face or whatever, but also just like even just some of the other exercises, whether it was primal recalibration or leaning into each other or anything else, because what we're really learning, or what I felt I was learning, was here's all the ways that I can truly trust both myself and other men and form this sacred brotherhood. So right there, you had that, you were modeling that 20 years before it even was happening with your brother when you were boxing him.
Yeah. And there's a part of me that longs for it. Like there's a part of me that longs for the youthful um, amount of time I had, I guess number one, but also the freedom in my expression to try these things. And I found as I got older and kind of maybe put myself in my own bit of a box, I lost my connection to that version of myself. And so these exercises, these practices that we have, they really do reconnect us to our inner essence, like to who we truly are. Whether you are a trained martial artist or whether um, we're a professional athlete. We get a lot of professional, like former athletes that come into Sacred Sons and then looking for a renewed sense of purpose. And so these tools, they're there to inform us. And of course, it's not about what happens in the fight. It's about the relational work that happens afterwards. It's about the reflection, and it's about the ability for us to see ourselves in other men and to have that reflection given back to us. I think there's a lot of things that get to move as a result of that. And that's why I'm so, you know, excited about this idea. Like you're a martial artist. I think there's room for relational artists in this world. Like what is this art of relationship, and not just romantic, intimate relationship, but the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with the world around us, and really um, owning that as we move throughout our lives.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, we're not just so often when people think the word relationship, first thing it goes to is romantic relationship because that's what I think people have been taught. Men in particular, we've been taught to kind of look outward for our relationship and usually toward women. And there creates that imbalance for one thing because a lot of women feel like they're having to do the emotional labor for us, which is the last thing they want to be doing, and I get that. And so I think that this is where men's organizations are so come in handy because it's like, well, guess what? You get to have relationship and very intimate, deep relationship with other men. You get to connect in brotherhood. You get to connect with that fullness of being, and you learn how to connect with yourself, which is huge because being in relationship with ourselves is essential. How can I possibly show up for anyone else if I'm not showing up for myself first?
Yeah. And like as a father, I can tell you, so many dads, right? We give and give and give, and it's our ability to provide and protect and be present is kind of what's known and what's out there. But what about our ability, like to play, to engage with life in a way that is regenerative in the ways of like not just like taking care of everybody else all the time, but like restoring at a deep level, restoring the excitement that we have for life. This is why I'm so passionate about this type of work, because what I have experienced in my own way and what I see in other men is just like this diminished kind of, suppressed way of being is really what it is. There's a lot of information that comes at us throughout our lives that asks us to conform and to like put those dreams aside. And I'm just really one who is here to promote passion and to like jumpstart that aspect of ourselves once again. And I've seen it happen over and over and over. And it's
What
real, and it works. And it's, man, it takes about 4 days to do it. 4 days in nature around like-hearted individuals who are willing to go there with you.
Well, something that I appreciate about you is that from the very beginning, when I first met you, that passion shows through. Like you're very present, you're very in the environment around you. And I'm curious, you talked briefly about fatherhood. You're definitely in the midst of it right now. So how does being a father contribute to that ability to be present in men's circles. So let's talk for a moment first just about fatherhood itself, and then how you take that and that sense of play, for example. And Earl Sagewolf and I talked about this a bit too recently, but how you bring that play into the men's work as a result, the lessons that you learned being a father, and how you bring that into the work.
I'm learning lessons every day.
No
You
doubt.
know, I love, I host a father's council, on
Mhm.
our online circle. And it's a council because I don't believe there's any one person who is like a master of fatherhood. I think it's like our collective experience and shares that really get to like inform us and teach each other, best ways of being a dad. And I'm just going to share like something that happened this weekend because it was really hard.
Mm.
Um, I just came home from like this awesome hike. We went out to Mission Trails here in San Diego where I live. I'm a father of four. I have a 1 year old, a 3 year old, a 5 year old, and a 10 year old. And unbeknownst to me, my 5 year old had taken a Sharpie, and I still don't know where he got it. And he marked up the back of our minivan. I'm talking about it's fucking totaled. It's like,
Oh
dude.
no.
And I was like, I was so upset, right? Because I'm like, oh man, this is not coming out. And this is gives me an opportunity when those sensations come up, the anger, the sadness, the parts of myself that were told maybe even when I was a kid to not make a mess. Like, damn, how do I hold this for him? He's 5. So how do I do? Guess the first thing I did after losing it for a second and going like, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? I called my accountability partner. I have like to this day, I have somebody who I can text and be like, I'm just like to be very honest with. So it doesn't have to come out sideways and hurt
Mhm.
people that I love and just go, this just happened. I'm losing it. What do you think? And just having somebody on the other end of that line for me, that brotherhood, it totally like brought me back to center, brought me back to presence. And he hit me back. Oh man. And he's also a father. He's an older father than I am. He's like, just remember it's just stuff, like you got this, come back to your breath, et cetera, et cetera. Giving me the keys, reflecting back to me the things that we work on in Sacred Sons. And that's what I did. I came back to my breath, and then I took my son to the car wash, and we vacuumed out and cleaned out the entire van. And I had him do it, and we talked about why you don't Sharpie the back of my van, and we cleaned it up, and we did it together. And I'm hopeful that there's a lesson in there for him. It took. I mean, this is at night after the hike, so I mean, we cleaned this van up for a solid 2 hours, vacuuming on a Saturday night, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm sharing that story because the work is never done. Life comes at you. That was a punch right in my face of a good day where I'm just like, oh, now this is happening. This is why the work is there for us. But how does it show up in men's work? Man, dealing with toddlers and toddler energy and tantrums is all the preparation I need to show up present for men in a men's weekend because it's kind of similar energy. Sometimes a man just needs to have like a full-on tantrum in order to get back to the essence of who he really is. And I'm able to hold space for it.
You do. I mean, I've seen you in action, and I really appreciate the way that you show up. I was just thinking, like, what an incredible bonding experience, actually. Yes, 2 hours of cleaning that van, but your son was also getting that time with you and will likely never forget it, not just for the lesson, but also for the way you showed up as a father for him.
Yeah, and I needed that bro on the other end of the call. This is the point. Like
Hmm.
so many men don't have someone to call,
Yeah.
period. And I'll just be a little bit more revealing. In that, I was like to my accountability partner, I'm like, all I want to do is freaking smoke a joint and forget about this. And right now I'm not smoking. We have an agreement, myself and my accountability partner, that that's not what we're doing. And I checked in with him on that. And I'm like, I'm not going to check out. I'm not going to fucking numb myself. I'm not going to ignore this. I'm going to breathe through this and and be here, because this is what life is beckoning us to do. Like, actually engage with this thing. Don't fucking run. And so yeah, for Holland, I think he really enjoyed putting the quarters in the vacuum machine. Like, we were out there, and the whole time I'm like, hey, I don't know where you got this Sharpie, but if you ever find a marker, we don't draw on walls, right? He's like, right, got it, got
Well, there you go. You learned something
it.
from it, right? But
I think this was the payback from all the graffiti I did as a kid on public walls, and now I got my karma back for that. But dude, this is just me sharing it, like a very probably relatable thing that other dads can attest to. It's like, man, sometimes this stuff comes out of left field and hits us to a point where we're like, maybe I do want to check out. Maybe I do want to flip out. Maybe, whatever that's going to be. And can I actually come back to center? That's the question for me.
well, and this is the thing too. Like I think sometimes people, I'm sure you've experienced this. I know I have. You have some degree of a position in an organization, or you're or something like that, and people kind of get stars in their eyes and don't see the real person. What I really like about this is just how relatable it is, because we've all been there where we've lost it or been ready to lose it or wanted to numb out, and being able to reach out to somebody, say, hey, I'm about to lose it. And at the end of the day, life doesn't care what position you have or what role you have in an organization or any of the other things. Life's going to come your way and it's going to punch you in the face. And the real question is, how do I show up for myself? How do I show up for the other people around me? And how do I do it in a way where it's present? Especially if we want to break those patterns, which all too often we have brought with us from our ancestors. As I share in my book, Quest for the mature
Embodied
masculinity.
masculine,
Yeah, the
yes,
mature
the mature
masculinity
masculine.
is how it's not that we live in the shadow of our parents, we live in the shadow of our ancestors. So, like right there, what you're doing is you're breaking that pattern through yourself by that choice to reach out to that accountability partner. And you're modeling for your son like something that is going to carry forward in ways that you won't necessarily ever even fully know. And how powerful is that? How real is that work? And that can be done in that moment. So he got to spend 2 hours cleaning and putting quarters in, but it also like that's gonna last a lifetime and then some because you
Yeah.
chose to do something different.
Yeah. And it's really about what I'm understanding more and more and practicing every day is that discipline. It's about self-discipline. It's not about me disciplining my son. It's about me having the discipline within that situation to take the breath, to come back to my tools, whatever they are, and to find the blessing or the lesson in the situation as quickly as possible. We use this term in Sacred Sons, blessings. Everything is either a blessing or a lesson, even the most challenging things. And the quicker I can get the lesson, the quicker that I can transmute that energy into a blessing. And I think that's something that's worthy to attempt, um, even in the mundane. I think life is happening in the mundane. Yes, there's amazing, big, huge events and um, you know things to look forward to. Those big life transitions, whether that's a graduation, a marriage, a funeral, some type of a celebration. Those things we actually spend very little time doing. Life is happening in the mundane. The work, that's where the deepest work is. And the more I can be present for that, um, the better I feel in my heart.
Yeah, I feel that. It's the same thing for me. It's like it was interesting, I went through I'd say like a 3, 4 month stint of just doing event after event after event. So, I did Convergent. I actually did a guts training, and then I did Convergence. And then after that, I did a somatic workshop on survival wounds. And then I did an immersion and then Prime Leadership. And then I wrapped up with an event called His Weekend. And it was powerful because there were all these initiatory experiences happening one after the other and I was using it as a way to melt the ice in my heart. Healing my relationship with the feminine was really a huge part of it so that I
Yes.
could show up more present with the feminine, both within myself and with the women in my life. And one of the reasons I went to Convergence 9 Remembrance is because here was this organization where it was 200 men, 200 women, and we're going to all work together. And I was like, how's that going to work? This is going to be interesting. And it worked
How,
out
yeah,
beautifully.
I was going to ask you, how did it work from your perspective? You know, I have my own experience and I was on my team, but how did it work from your
You,
experience?
for me, it was there was a couple of things that was fascinating. One was on the one hand, kind of going into it and being like, I don't really realizing like one of the big realizations I had that weekend was I don't feel safe with myself. And if I don't feel safe with myself, I definitely don't feel safe with anyone else. And I don't feel like anyone could possibly feel safe with me. And I could be okay with that and being able to land into that space and being held. But it was also like when we had the separation and then we had that really beautiful moving ceremony where we're all waiting and we're singing and then we come out and we kneel and everything else and then we come back in and we bring the feminine and masculine back together and just having those experiences together and watching how we had started out tentatively connecting, then we separated, then we came back and we were so much closer. And what I loved about it was that right from the beginning of the weekend, and I would say this to anyone who's watching this, like because Remembrance 2 is coming up in September. Like if you're curious about doing this, totally do it. It is worth the investment. What I loved about it was that there was no pressure about like, oh, we're not here to hook up or anything else. We're here to do the work and we're here to connect and heal ourselves and each other and to come away. And I felt like I formed so many close relationships in that weekend, and I'm still in touch with that particular circle. We check in with each other every so often. And one, I'm glad that it was the start of my Sacred Son's journey. Like for real. I'd watched a couple podcast episodes, but that's not the same thing. Like come out to an event. That's what I would say to people. Go out to an event. You'll probably see me at some of these events for sure, because I'm definitely going to be continuing to make this part of my journey. But I think, especially as it relates to men and women working together, there's this real hunger. And when you have men and women together, it is 10 times the intensity of just having a men's only experience or a women's only
Absolutely.
experience. I had the same thing with the His Weekend because that weekend was actually both men and women facilitating the experience. So it was, again, that 10 times experience and
And
in
it's
something.
it's not only to do the inner work, but to be witnessed alongside of others doing it. And
Right.
so there is an edge there of like, yes, when we're doing men's work, although there's a big threshold for a lot of us to come into a men's container, to be witnessed, to reveal intimate pieces of our expression, that's one thing, but to be witnessed by the feminine and alternatively for women to be witnessed by men. I feel like women are a little bit ahead in terms of like relational work, red tents, the ability to gather song circles, even things like this. But I felt this real movement for the women to be witnessed by the men through their primal expressions.
Mhm.
On my team, we also had women in sacred combat, like really stepping in and having the men hold the container, hold the agreements that we always do, but to allow them to step into their primal essence, I thought was really beautiful to create the space for that. And it's not that it can't happen in a women's only space, but there is something that is so needed at this time for us all to do this human. Um, I'm thinking it's the embodied human experience, truly. And so, what better way to really get in there than to have all aspects, and not only men and women. My kids were there. Some of the men brought their mothers and their grandfathers. Like we had the whole spectrum of range of humans. We even had a little couple dogs running around.
Yeah,
So
we
to
did.
truly do this work in community is what I find um, finding it to be the way.
It is the way, and and there is value in having like a men's only or a women's only space. Sometimes
Yes,
you need that. I don't think that you can have a container with both men and women without having that necessary safety and work done ahead of time.
agreed.
And so that's something that I think is really beautiful is that those spaces are continuing to occur. And at the same time, having that joint space, the thing that really I would say also stands out is yes, I agree with you. The women wanted to be witnessed, but also being able to witness men doing their work and actually stepping up and taking responsibility and being like, oh, men can do this. I don't
Yes.
have to be the one who holds the container for my man. My man can actually step up and actually hold the container for me and witness me.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And, you know, no one's perfect. We're not promoting perfection here.
Mm-mm.
If anything, we're acknowledging um, the misalignments. We're acknowledging the places where we get uh, to transform, to heal, to do just a little bit better. I'm all about baby steps, man. Like to do just a little bit better today than we did yesterday. Because with my first son, had he marked up the car back when he was 5, that would have been a different version of me, like reacting to that straight reaction. And now I'm in a place of responding to it in a way where I have checks and balances in place. I have protocol in my mind. Like this is for me. This is healthy because I don't want the impact um, of my thoughts, words, actions to come out in a way that causes more harm. And I just want to share this really cool piece that came through from Remembrance, um, which was a woman who was on my team. She's like, I want to tell you something. I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you this, but she's like, I came here because I thought I was going to find my husband. She's like, I wanted a sacred son, you know. And there's some truth to that for I think for all the single folks who were there. It's like maybe there's something there. And she's like, and I didn't. And she's like, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you that that's what I wanted. But she's like, what I didn't expect is that I would come out of this with so many brothers, with so many friends who are men who held space for me, who listened to my story, that didn't want anything from me. But like now, I actually have some people who I consider like dear friends as a result of this experience. And that was not what the intention was in her coming. And so I really took that in like, man, there's so much here in a culture that hypersexualizes our relationships, like kind of what we were talking about before. But there's a lot of room in the personal development space, but just in our experience to have allies on this journey, to have friends or to have people who can witness and hold space for us on this journey. And I think that that's profound. And I think people used to, in a way, you can get that through community and religion and school and any kind of um, shared mission that you're on. But to find it in this way, um, there was something really beautiful about that.
There was, and I think one of the things it's teaching us is also to expand our sense of community. When I come into any of the containers that I come into, I know that like I don't necessarily know anyone. Like I didn't know anyone going up to Convergence. I didn't know anyone at all. I'd been doing men's work for a couple of years, but I had not gone through a Sacred Sons experience, so I didn't know what to expect. And that was one of the reasons I went, going back to that challenge what you know to discover what you can learn. And what I loved about it is I came out of there knowing a lot of people. And every single experience I've had since then, when whatever container it is, I come out knowing some more people, knowing I can reach out, knowing that I can text or call or whatever. And there have been a few moments where that's happened where I've been like, hey, I'm going through a rough time right now, or but it's like knowing that I'm not alone. And this is a huge part of what our society needs. Our society is not a culture and it needs culture. But how do you get that culture? You get it when you come together in community, when you bring in these elements. And it's not all about the work. I mean, one of the things that I really appreciate with Sacred Sons is there is that sense of play. So we talked a bit about it with Sacred Son or with Sacred Combat, but what are some of the other ways that you see play coming out, like in your own life and experience, and then how it shows up in the work that you do and facilitate?
Yeah. So I play a lot. Like I have three boys. Dude, we wrestle daily. Like that's after dinner. It's like I think it's called the witching hour, like before bed and after dinner. My boys, like we have a carpet in a room and it's like, Dad, come wrestle us.
So you're doing
And
carpet work, just a different
we're doing
type.
the carpet work, bro. Deep on the carpet. We're rolling around. We're getting messy, getting wild. And no, that physical contact is, and I'm thinking about my son Johan, who's 3. He's a challenging little dude. Um, he has some challenger energy in him, and it's so important for him to get it out physically. Like I'm not going to tell this 3-year-old anything, right? But if I can play with him and let him, you know, like overpower me and then tap him out and then like reset and let him jump off the couch, which is the top rope, and land on me. Like there's some real medicine in that that actually, what does it do? Does it connect neural pathways? Does it does it do something psychosomatic? It must, because there's a calmness that exists on the other side. There's a safety that exists on the other side that words cannot express. And so that's the same thing with grown men. And we originally, before we were sparring and before we brought the boxing gloves in, we used to have a process called Wild and Wise with Trevor Spring. And this was explored through wrestling. And so we used to wrestle a bit more than we boxed. And I saw this over and over with men. It's like the smiles that come off after just wrestling for a couple minutes to a takedown, or like being met physically. What I like to say here is that for most men, they are the strongest person in their household. Like if you were just to look at it in that way. So how often are you actually being met physically? Even if you work out at the gym, like you're pushing dead weight, you're pushing bands or a bar to feel resistance. But what about when you come up against another human being and dance that sacred dance and push those edges with someone of equal and opposite force? It unlocks something in us, to that informs us of like where we are physically, but also like the element of play that's there. This is an ancient art form. In fact, if you look at like some of the Greeks, like Plato wrote about this, specifically men wrestling to evoke ecstatic states. Now, Greeks were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but there's something that's really enlightening about this, because these men were not just philosophers and thinkers. They were also physically embodied. They were also extremely competitive with one another. And there's something about men, like competition is a love language. You hear about the other love languages, but for men, competition is embedded in our code. And when we're not accessing it, and it's only coming out in like corporate competition or climbing a ladder in that way, that's not getting to the real depth of it, of what it needs to be. And so, yeah, play, competition, for healthy competition. I think that I think that these things are a necessary part of continued evolution in life. And many of us as men, we tend to leave it back in our childhood. So, yeah, Sacred Sons, we have many games that we play that we bring through to help evoke these states.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that, like if men's work is too cerebral, there's something missing there. And it can be sometimes. There needs to be that element of physicality. Like when I step into the ring with somebody or I'm doing some kind of trust exercise or something like that with somebody, there is just something very playful and energetic about it that brings something out and unlocks those doors and opens the wells of deep masculine power. And then it's like, here I am.
Yeah, or I even think of myself on that carpet, like I'll prop up Johan, my 3-year-old, and he'll fly, right? And it's like, oh, daddy, fly me. And then think about like the 10 men raising one man up after a deep process and flying him.
Hmm.
Like that's connected. That sensation of like, raise me up. Let me expand my wings. Like it does something to us that will never happen if you're sitting in a chair with, somebody asking you questions. There's
That's
just
true. I mean, we're having our fun here, but still, it is different. I totally get that.
but I mean more like in the therapeutic way. Like
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
for therapy. I feel like therapy is an incredible tool, but especially for men, like actionable lived experience, that sensation of flying once again, like that sensation that we can give each other through a real experience. Um, I think there's something very sacred about it. And we make agreements so that we can get to the point where we can have these shared experiences. Like I watched the Super Bowl on Sunday. One team wins, but ultimately every other team in the league lost, right? And
Hmm.
then there's an MVP, and that one man is raised up on the shoulders of the team. Yes, we did this. And that experience should not be put in such a box that there are millions and millions of men sitting on their couch watching this one man get raised up, thinking to themselves that they will never have that experience. Maybe they will never be a Super Bowl champion. That's the truth. However, just being like a good man, a good father, a good brother, a good friend, a good husband. Can we raise you up for that? I say yes. What do you say?
I say yes. I say we need it. And there are ways to be champions in our lives that doesn't have to involve just being a sports figure.
That's it. That's it. There are ways to be champions in our lives.
Yeah.
That's a cl-
So
that's a cl- that's a clip.
there you go. That's a clip right there. Yes, it is. So I'm gonna wrap us up here with two final questions. First question is the standard one of where can we find you online and where can we get more information?
Yes. Well, if you would like to hear more from me, you can listen to the Sacred Sons podcast.
Which I
Um,
highly recommend.
thank you. I'm putting out episodes about every other week right now. And there's a lot of great conversations with men who are part of our community, with women who are part of our community, and just also with ceremonialists and people that are bringing their wisdom through in a way that I'm very curious about. I'm naturally a curious person, and so I would say that's the most intimate way to connect with me is listening to the podcast, Instagram Adam Jackson, and if you really want to see me, go to sacredsons.com, sign up for an event, and come out. Get in, join us. Um, do yourself a favor, invest in yourself, invest in your healing, invest in your growth, especially for the dads out there. And this is more about connecting with themselves than connecting with me, but there's a thought that I can't take this time away. I can't go do this thing because I've got all of this responsibility. And I'm here to invite you in a way to let you know that giving yourself this gift, giving yourself this 4 days or whatever the experience is, so that you can truly focus on yourself and reconnect with the essence of who you are and why you are here will do wonders for all of the things that you are responsible for. All of those things that you're holding deserve your best. And this is a way. This is a path. There are many paths, but Sacred Sons is a really profound one. And so if you feel the call, go to sacredsons.com, sign up for leadership training, sign up for an event, and we will see you there.
Love it. Fully attest to that. I will say that it has been deeply enriching for me, and I love each experience. I'm looking forward to having more. And my final question is, what is a word of wisdom or phrase, if you will, that you can give us that we can carry forward into the rest of our day as we move forward from here?
Can I read something?
Yes, you can, please.
Great. I wrote something down recently, and I'm going to read it because I don't have it memorized yet. Okay. So, brothers and sisters, if you're listening, take a deep breath in. Hanu. Spread love, be love, find peace, bring joy, have compassion. Praise God, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, Enoch, Jesus, Yahweh. Ask forgiveness. Forgive and be forgiven. Listen to those who wouldn't listen. Be grateful and present. Life is happening through you, not to you. All of our relations. Thank you. You're welcome. Aho, Ashe. Amen. And with that, I am in.
Mm. I'm in as well, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciated the opportunity to connect with you even further. I'm glad that my viewers and all the people who get to watch this down the line are going to get to hear this as well and get to know you better. And it's been an honor, sir, and a privilege to be able to hold this space with you today.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for your passion as well. You're a prolific writer, and you've written 53 books. Is that still true?
Yeah, I just finished the 53rd. I'm working on 54 now.
53, 54. So thanks for sharing your wisdom in that form. And I look forward to potentially collaborating with you in the future.
I'm looking forward to it as well. All right. Take care, sir, and have an excellent day, my
Peace.
brother. Peace.